With its own liaison office in London, Bavaria wants to promote and expand cooperation with Great Britain after Brexit. Now the office, which is located in a co-working space in the heart of London, has started its work. The United Kingdom is and will remain an important partner for Bavaria. We want to keep in close contact, especially after Brexit, said Bavaria's Prime Minister Markus Söder on Tuesday in Munich at the opening. With a comprehensive Bavarian-British agenda, we will continue to fill our good relations with life in many areas. Well, Söder was not present at the opening, but he wrote on Twitter that he was looking forward to being able to travel to London again soon. According to the State Chancellery, the task of the office is to promote economic exchange with Great Britain after its exit from the EU. It should therefore serve as the first point of contact for Bavarian companies that want to invest in England and for British companies that are planning investments in Bavaria. In addition, the Free State wants to deepen cooperation in science, education, youth exchange and culture, and the office should help with this. With a trade volume of more than 11 billion euros, the United Kingdom is an important partner for Bavaria. Most recently, Baden-Württemberg also opened an office in London in November. You might have seen my video on that one. According to the Bavarian State Chancellery, the British Consul General in Bavaria, Simon Kendall, said, "We are extremely pleased that Bavaria is opening a new representative office in London, which has not existed in the United Kingdom since the 19th century. The rapid development of new technologies and major global challenges require even closer cooperation between long-standing partners." The 19th century is referring to is when they still had a king in Bavaria. More than a dozen crew members were infected with corona on a German Navy ship. And the consequence is now the ship cannot move out to a NATO mission. Because of corona cases among the crew, the German naval ship Berlin cannot take part in a NATO mission off Norway for the time being. The task force supplier did not leave Wilhelmshaven on Tuesday afternoon as planned. That's what the German Navy announced on Twitter. The reason is 14 crew members who tested positive for corona in a PCR test. The Berlin should join the NATO Naval Association Standing Maritime Group 1. According to the Navy, it is primarily responsible for controlling and protecting strategically important sea routes in the North Atlantic and the North Sea. The Berlin was to remain at sea for a good 2 months and take part in maneuvers and exercises. The focus there is on the cold response maneuver of Norway. According to the Navy last week, the Dutch head of the NATO association should also come on board the Berlin with his staff and lead the ships from there. The German utility with a crew of 210 was then to return to Wilhelmshaven in mid-April. A good start for Friedrich Merz in the position of CDU leader. According to a recent survey, the union has overtaken the Social Democrats and has been ahead for the first time since mid-August 2021. The Liberals are also losing approval. So according to a Forsa survey, the union is again somewhat more popular with voters in Germany than the SPD. If there were a general election on Sunday, the CDU-CSU would have 27% of the votes and the SPD 23%. This emerges from the current trend barometer from RTL and NTV. Compared to the results of the previous week, the union gains 3 percentage points, the SPD loses 2. The union last achieved a better value than the SPD in mid-August 2021. And according to the survey, the FDP also lost 1 percentage point and fell below the 10% mark at 9%. The values for all other parties remained unchanged. The Greens are still at 16%, the Left at 6%, the AfD at 10%, and other parties at 9%. At 23%, the proportion of non-voters and undecided roughly corresponds to the proportion of non-voters in the federal election. Election polls are generally subject to uncertainties. Among other things, declining party ties and increasingly short-term voting decisions make it difficult for the opinion research institutes to weight the data collected. In principle, surveys only reflect the opinion at the time of the survey and are not a real forecast for an election outcome. But it's still a good sign for Friedrich Merz. Where is the SPD going in the Ukraine crisis? The Chancellor has given a position, but not everyone goes along with it. After a top meeting, party leader Klingbeil makes one thing clear. What we say applies to the entire party. According to SPD co-leaders Lars Klingbeil, Russia must expect a tough and consistent response from the West if it violates Ukraine's borders. The leadership of the SPD is united on this issue, said Klingbeil on Monday evening on German public television after a meeting of around 20 leading Social Democrats on the subject of Russia. All options are on the table, he emphasized when asked whether the Baltic Sea pipeline Nord Stream 2 could also be subject to sanctions in the event of war. But it's also about preventing a war in the heart of Europe, he said. That is the priority for the coming days and weeks. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has the support of the SPD. Well, in view of the dissenting voices of former SPD chairmen such as former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder or ex-Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel, Klingbeil made it clear that the two current party chairmen would decide on the SPD's position together with the Chancellor. What we say applies to the entire SPD. The escalation is currently clearly coming from Russia. That is the common path of the SPD, and it is supported by everyone who has taken and is taking on responsibility in social democracy, he says. Well, according to information from the German press agency, Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania's Prime Minister Manuela Schwesig took also part in the consultations. Even after the crisis escalated, she continued to advocate for the commissioning of the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline between Russia and Germany. In her country, or her state better to say, numerous jobs depend on the project. The federal government, led by the Social Democrats, has come under increasing international criticism in recent days for its actions in the Ukraine crisis. Germany is accused of not putting enough pressure on Russia during the crisis, and I do agree with the international voices personally, by the way. Scholz had hesitated for a long time before clearly positioning himself. Simultaneously with the threat of sanctions against Russia, he then clearly rejected the delivery of lethal weapons to Ukraine, unlike some of his allies, and that, for me personally, is a big mistake. This has been criticized by Ukraine, but also by countries like Poland and the Baltic states. In the USA, the question is also being raised as to whether Germany is still a reliable partner, and I have to understand them because they give that picture. The SPD Presidium had already placed itself behind Chancellor Scholz's line at a closed meeting a week ago. However, Schröder and Gabriel, both no longer active in party politics, broke away from the party line. Schröder accused Ukraine of saber-rattling on Friday, and Gabriel then called for a discussion about arms deliveries without taboos. And it's the first time in a long time that I agree with Gabriel. It's weird, but it is. I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.